am always excited to introduce you all to my next guest, but this guest is incredibly special. Courtney Clark is the embodiment of grace and grit, but actually today you're going to learn that she's much more than that. She's a resilience expert and speaker and author whose life has been shaped by extraordinary challenges, including being a two-time cancer survivor and undergoing brain surgery. But what makes Courtney's story so powerful? It's not what she's endured, it's how she's chosen to live and move through it. Welcome, Courtney.
Hello, Terri.
I'm so truly excited to chat with you. Uh, when I started this podcast, I created a list of people that I wanted to invite, and some of them were incredibly famous people being super ambitious about my guests.
Yep.
But then I quickly realized that in my life, I already have so many experts on speed dial, people who are internationally known, who are also right there in my backyard, and I know and love them as friends. And so, of course, you moved up to the top of the list because you are someone that I have watched grow, have life events, but also you've been there and you've witnessed so much of that of me. And I'm learning that it's truly, when we share how we do life together, that people can learn more from us because they know our stories are real. So that's why I'm so excited to have you here today.
Love it. Love it.
Well, we're here to talk about your new book called The Shortcut. And I know that people are known for hearing you talk about grit and resilience, but sort of a spoiler alert, your new book is all about how those two things might help you, but they're not the only thing that you need to overcome a mountain.
Yes. What we found in our research, so I had a research team because I always want to know more about resilience. But the thing that I have been realizing is that I don't think resilience comes from positivity, you can do anything you put your mind to. I don't think resilience comes from positivity so much as it comes from adaptability. And realizing that, I was like, oh, because that flies in the face of the way we typically think about resilience, which is push through, work harder, you can do it. And I realized there's a gap. And that's what I set out to figure out and try to solve for.
Well, I want to give people the backstory in your life. This is Roots+Rebirth. We talk about people's origin stories and life events that may shape them and allow them to have a rebirth. And I think when people have these events and these rebirths, that they become a truer version of yourself. And so much of your origin story, it really is how you got here and what led you to writing this book.
Yes. So I had graduated from college and I was working in Lower Manhattan. It was my very first job just a couple months after college graduation. And I was working in Lower Manhattan on September 11th. I was about 17 blocks north of the World Trade Center. And I didn't realize at the time that coming back to work all those weeks and months that I spent down there, kind of in that mile and a half that was around the World Trade Center, caused me to develop cancer. I've actually had cancer, Terri, 4 times.
4 times?
I think
I don't know
we've
why.
been friends. We've been friends through, I think, 2 of them. But two of them were before I even moved here and before we met. So I've had cancer 4 times, and it may keep coming back because that's what that exposure they're finding does. So I was diagnosed with cancer the first time at age 26. And then again, 2 years later. And it upended my entire life. I was newly married at the time, and I got a divorce through that and really did start my life over. And in the end, it was the worst thing that you could possibly go through. And talk about grit. When you get a divorce, a lot of people go oh, but you're giving up. You made a commitment, don't give up on your marriage. That was a really hard thing for me to weigh because I truly knew that although this was not a bad person, this wasn't my person.
Yeah.
And trying to go through that challenge together made me realize that, and that we weren't the partnership that I thought we were, that I thought we needed. And also realizing that, oh, my life might actually be really short and I need to make the most out of it.
Well, I started off by saying, you embody grace and grit. I think people, they now understand. I mean, just even the way that you tell that story, it's like you're already giving yourself permission to do the things that are most important to you, but realizing that life might be short. And you're saying yes to the possibility of what could exist and betting on yourself. And so I just really love that because I do think when you go through a divorce or you have a traumatic, health issue, people tend to, want you to grieve. They assume that you're on the end of the spectrum where you're sad or where you might not be relating to like this could mean something different and something better. And so the way that you told that piece of your divorce story, you have set it up like there is something better on the other side.
Well, it's so interesting too. Like if you look at the research around post-traumatic growth,
Mm,
that many people are completely set back by trauma. But if you are not just completely decimated by trauma, then the odds are very good that you actually will grow from it. So you could almost kind of go either way. What I have found is that it's not even a binary, it's a both. I
mm.
think you have to go through the time of being really sad. You have to go through the time of grief, of the it's not fair. Because if you try to deny that, if you try to go like right to the positivity about everything, that's toxic positivity. And that's, I'm really against toxic positivity. And it's very evident in my research and in the book, The Shortcut, that that's not really the best way. You can't ignore the struggle. You can be in the struggle and then get out of the struggle.
That makes so much sense. Well, I'd love for you just even to explain to people, how did you get to the point of researching, resilience and adaptability? Because that in itself is a rebirth of you as a professional and you and the way that you have decided to share your gifts with the world.
Well, you and I met, I was a nonprofit professional.
Yeah.
And I loved being a nonprofit professional. And so I had started, after years in the field, I had started my own nonprofit and I had gone back to graduate school because I wanted to grow my tiny little nonprofit big enough to get another executive director after me. I didn't want to fall victim to founder syndrome and be there too long. So my plan was like, I'm going to get educated. We're going to make this really good. And then I'm going to get out. And at grad school, that's where I learned that I'm a secret research nerd. And I didn't know. But I fell in love with doing the research. And so I wrote my thesis for grad school on the role of giving, volunteering, helping people heal from trauma. Because we know that a lot of people get involved or they may start a foundation. People start to give back when they've been through something difficult. And I wanted to know, well, does that always happen? Is there a right way, a right time, a right place? And how do we harness that? And there was research about it. But it was very siloed and like these people weren't talking to these people. So I was able to pull some of these threads and create a model that was cohesive of like, oh, well, this tells us this, but then if we add that, and I loved doing that. And I wasn't even doing any of my own research. It was all secondary research, but just finding those nuggets and tying them together to create a strategy and realize, and then it won my school's graduate research award. And so I turned that into my first book, The Giving Prescription. And then I was hooked. And so now for about 11 years, I have been, I travel the world and I speak to organizations really about like, how do we change our plans and still reach our goals? Because to me, That's resilience, not the gritting through, but the dodging and weaving.
That makes so much sense. And if people have not heard of The Giving Prescription, I definitely recommend it. It's such a beautiful book, and I think it can help people a lot right now.
It's a
So
good
many.
gift if
Yeah.
you've got somebody in your life and they're like they've come out the other side of something, but they're still trying to find their footing. It's a really good gift.
And even for, people that are struggling with finding a way to give right now, because so many people might even feel like what's happening in the world and the changes in the world of trauma, you know, it is a tool that can help them find a way to do something good amidst what might feel like they don't have control over.
Absolutely, 100%. So when we help other people, it's actually one of the best ways to get perspective on our own struggles.
Yeah.
You
Well,
really, when you help someone else, you make meaning out of it.
I will say I definitely believe in that. And
Yeah.
when I think back to sometimes in my life when I was probably like over volunteering and over committed, it
You?
was I know, that was a wild time. But when I think about it, I was in a traumatic cycle at work. Like, I wasn't
Yeah.
getting what I needed at work. Work was incredibly difficult, and so much of it was me trying to soothe myself and finding a place where I could give, but give in a manner that felt good for me. And
Yes.
honestly, I didn't get out of that cycle until I had a volunteer assignment. I was chairing a gala committee, and I did not feel good doing the work. And that's what just kind of like broke me from it. But so I definitely want to get into the meat and potatoes of the shortcut, but I definitely want to point that out to people that you have so many tools out there, books, your website, talks that people can use to get them through any period of time in life that might be challenging.
I, what I realized in doing this work is we all struggle, right? Sometimes it is cancer, or in my case, because of the cancer, they found a brain aneurysm that was about to hemorrhage, that they never would have found if I hadn't had cancer. I know that my health struggles are very dramatic, but we are all challenged. We all struggle. And realizing that, I was like, oh, this is very important to get out to the world because we're all facing circumstances where we're like, this is not the life I was promised. Why did things not turn out the way I expected? And so that's what I'm so excited to have tools to help people, like, not just feel better about it, but actually do something, like be strategic about it.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, Terri here. You know, I am all about transformation, and that includes how we care for our bodies. That's why I love Pure Method Collagen by Dr. Dina Peralta Rake. It's clean, science backed, and made for those who want to feel radiant from the outside in. Right now, my Roots+Rebirth family gets 15% off. Just head to puremethod.co and use promo code Terri at checkout. Because rebirth starts with nourishing every part of you, inside out.
I love it. Well, I do want to talk about the shortcut. And we've already said, like, so many of us carry, the belief that challenges are going to be hard. They're going to be a struggle, they're going to be unpleasant. But you stated that what you've really learned is that, resilience comes after the struggle. It's how you adapt and what you learn in that process. So I'd love for you just to share what led you to writing this book, and where did you start when you sat down as a research nerd to dive in to start doing the research to write it?
Well, I didn't start with the research. I started with a problem. Maybe even it's probably more appropriate to say I started with a feeling because I was scrolling probably Instagram one night. I was scrolling some social media one night and I saw 3 memes in a row that were like, quitters never win. Never, ever, ever give up. You can do anything you put your mind to. And it's 10:30 at night and I'm a morning bird. And so like I was tired and I was salty and I rolled over to my husband and I was like, this is BS. I'm so sick of the only way we have to motivate people is like never give up, grit, grit, grit. And I was like, it's just wrong.
Yeah.
But everybody has accepted it. and that was for me, the light bulb. It didn't start with the research. It started with frustration and this realization that I think we have a problem. And so then I went into the research and I found that there actually is this little tiny area of research called goal disengagement.
Goal, GOAL?
Goal, yes. Like, how do we disengage from our goals when they're not working out?
Wow.
And I'm reading this and I was like, this sounds exactly like what I've done. It sounded like what I did when I realized that I needed to get a divorce. It sounded like what I did when I realized like I need to leave this job. I thought I had gone to NYU for college because I wanted to be an actress. And my senior year, I went, I love performing, but I hate the life of a performer. And so many times in my life, I have disengaged from goals that aren't working out. But in other times in my life, I haven't disengaged from those goals. And I've still kept them in my mind as like, oh, but I'll be letting people down or I'll be letting myself down. And I realized how many times I had seen this lesson come up again. And so that's when I hired my research team. And we found that 71% of working Americans were taught to never, ever, ever give up, no matter what.
Wow, that is fascinating.
Yep.
I have so many questions and I don't know if you have answers, but I hear that and I tend to go immediately because of the work that I do. Is that because of the way our country was founded? Like, it's like, where do we get this belief that we can never give up? And I know for me, that definitely was the headline every night in my household.
Yeah. I think it is absolutely cultural. I don't know that every culture has that conditioning as much as we do in the US, that never give up. We were founded on like, if you believe it, you can achieve it.
Yeah.
But the reality is that our resources as human beings are limited. Our time is limited. Our money is limited. Our health is limited. We can only do so many things with our day, with our budget. And so if we're not directing those resources where they truly matter and are gonna pay off, then we're not actually being as successful as we should be. So, and some people will phrase that to say, so like, oh, okay, so you can do anything, but you can't do everything, which is probably a lot closer to the truth. But I'd even argue, I don't think you can do anything. Like, I can't be an NBA basketball player.
As the kids would say, that's hashtag facts.
Yes, hashtag facts. So, we have to be realistic about our goals. That doesn't mean we can't dream big. We should absolutely dream big. But we can't maybe have 10 giant dreams because we don't have the resources to have 10 giant dreams. For every Olympic athlete who achieved the top of their field, there are other things they didn't do. They made hard choices about where to train or how to train, or maybe they didn't get married or start a family, or they were like, I could have also been a lawyer, but I didn't do that. I chose to invest here.
Wow. I have so many thoughts about that because we are taught that we can have everything, right? We're taught if we work hard, we can have everything. But if what you're saying is true, and I do believe it to be true, we don't have the resources to do everything. We certainly don't have the time to do everything. And sometimes we want money to create some shortcuts to help us do all the things. And so what I'm also learning from you is sometimes money still can't get us everything. Like
Right.
we need to ruthlessly prioritize what is that goal and what's important to us.
Yeah. Money's not the only resource, right? Assistance and friendship and mentorship, like all of these are resources. And any time you use a resource, then you may not have it for the next goal. So even if you do have a lot of money and you can put it towards this goal, well, then you use that money, you don't have it for the next goal. And all of this applies to individuals, it applies to organizations. So what we're finding is that a lot of times, we set a goal or we set a 3-year strategic plan. And then we're like, okay, if I just work really hard, it's bound to pay off. But then all these other factors change, the economy changes, like different things all contribute, and you're not swimming in the same water that you were swimming in when you set the goal. So it's like, is that still your goal? Or maybe it is still something that you really want, but maybe it's not the right goal because circumstances have changed. And so then the question is, do you want to keep gritting on this goal because you said you would and quitters never win? Or is there a detour?
Nice. Okay, now you are teaching us something. We are like learning, and in school, I got my pen right here, ready to go.
Okay.
So, how do you help us identify what is the right goal? Like if I even think through my text message change this week, I have friends that are looking for homes, they're looking for houses, interest rates just went up, friends that are, going through job interviews, they're unhappy with their current job, they feel like they're being pushed out, but they're going through job interviews, people that are just burned out, but they still might want to start a side hustle like being an interior decorator or a makeup artist. So when you have all of these competing priorities, how do you discern what is top?
Here's a great strategy. So you've been gritting on a goal and you hit that obstacle. This is where you find the shortcut, right? This is where you need to detour around and find the shortcut instead of just like pushing on the brick wall. So the first step that I tell people to do is to take a look at that goal and make sure that it was the right size. Because a lot of times, if you have a goal that isn't working out, the problem is that the goal was too small.
Wow.
Not too big.
Wow.
Too small. Because a lot of what we call a goal is actually a plan. You know how you can tell the difference? If there's just one way to get there. If it's like,
okay,
I'm going to do step A, then step B, then step C. That is a plan. If it's just like that one linear path, you've got yourself a plan, not a goal. So what I tell people to do is to supersize their goal. Find the biggest possible expression of the goal. Like what's the goal behind the goal? What was driving you to set that goal? So the goal isn't, I'm going to start a side hustle. The goal is fulfillment. The goal is financial independence or security. So think of a supersized goal as like a big picture word. I call it turning ABC goals, achievement, behavior, comparison, into VIP goals, values, ideals, and purpose.
So if I'm tracking for, my friend who wants to be a makeup artist and be like Nikki De La Rose. So I was thinking, okay, so maybe her big goal is to be Nikki and the makeup artist is a plan. No, her big goal is financial fulfillment.
Correct.
So
It's not just like think more famous, think more money. It's actually like think about the why. And then being a makeup artist, famous or not famous, is one. So this is step 2, right? So we set the supersized goal. Step 2 is we build parallel plans. Not backup plans. Backup plans are like fallback position. That's going somewhere else. But parallel plans are all going the same parallel. I'm getting mathy on you. But like parallel plans, if you think about it, they're all converging towards this supersized goal. So there might be other ways that she could reach whatever she decides her supersized goal is. If it's like a sense of autonomy, maybe she wants to be a makeup artist because she wants to be in control of her own schedule instead of her day job. Or, maybe it really is fulfillment. So not just monetary fulfillment, but also creative and artistic fulfillment. It's like, what's that big supersized goal that she's missing? And then being a full-time famous makeup artist is one plan. But maybe, being a side hustle makeup artist is another parallel plan. And maybe there are some other ways that she can accomplish that. So like for me, leaving a legacy is my supersized goal. I always thought I would be a mom, but because of cancer, that's not possible. And if I just thought, oh, my goal is to be a mom and I can't achieve my goal, that's it. But when I realized this strategy, that my goal, it's not even to like be a parent. It's that when I leave this planet, and I don't know how long my life is going to get to be, that I'm leaving something behind. So I volunteer, and I have fostered, and I mentor, and I've started 2 nonprofits, and I've written 4 books. And that is a legacy. So it doesn't look the way I expected, right? There's not a blonde-haired, blue-eyed baby in my arms, but I am going towards legacy. And I have these parallel plans all get me there. So if one parallel plan doesn't come through, I can grieve it, but then I can pivot.
Yeah. That is so beautiful because many times we see all of those things as separate. They live in their own silo. And so
Yes.
because we're not connecting them to a larger
Yes.
goal, we
Yes.
continue to put ourselves in this cycle where we do not feel fulfilled because we're still chasing all the other things because we don't realize they are
Yes.
parallel, leading to something bigger. This is mind-blowing.
Well, what I'm so excited about for this too is that I feel like so often when we talk about things like resilience, we talk about attitude and it's all internal. And then it's just like, so feel better.
Yeah.
But this is a strategy. And like, this is how we actually go from like, oh, okay, we found in our research, oh my gosh, Terri, we found that people were actually really on board with the concept of adaptability. Like they get it. People understand that you have to be adaptable to be successful. But there was this massive gap between what we know to be true and what we're willing to do about it.
Oh, wow.
So when we talked about adaptability, like as an idea, everybody was like, yeah, I'm adaptable. Like I love adaptability. And yes, I want my kids to be adaptable and my boss should be more adaptable. Everybody needs to be adaptable. But then when we asked about behaviors, things like, going to a new plan, if the plan wasn't working, letting go of goals that weren't working out. Nope. People were like, a third of people said, absolutely not, quitters never win. And more than a third of people said, maybe, but probably not. I should just work harder. So this means more than 2/3 of people think they're adaptable. They like the idea of adaptability, but they're not choosing the behaviors that adaptability requires. This is probably all of us at some point or another. So that's what I'm hoping is we can close this gap so people will realize like, oh, I think I'm okay with change. I think I'm adaptable. But then when I'm getting the choice, like when it comes right down to it, I'm still hearing that voice in my head going, quitters never win.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I get tired after treading water when I don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
I think that definitely can change people's perspectives and their mindsets. So once people understand that, what are 2 or 3 things that you teach them so that they can become adaptable? Like, what is the next step?
Hey, y'all, it's Terri. At Roots+Rebirth, we talk a lot about legacy, and salt is creating one worth celebrating. When you choose salt period products, you're not just choosing sustainable care. You're helping a girl stay in school through their Africa-based donations and education programs. As Cherie, Salt's founder, says, 1 cup can break the cycle of poverty for generations. Join the movement. Go to salt, that's SAALT.com, salt with 2 A's, and use code Terri for 15% off. Because change starts here, and it starts with you.
So really the key is you find that supersized goal, you build your parallel plans, and then step 3 is you flex between those plans. Like you truly go, okay, this one might be the one I'm most excited about, but I'm still going to lay some groundwork over here for these. Like maybe right now I'm just going to like key focus on one because I'm really, really busy. Or it's like, oh, I'm going to maximize my opportunities and do all these multiple things. So an analogy that I give sometimes is like, okay, say your goal was, a lot of people, a goal is financial, right? So they say, my goal is I'm going to save $10,000. That's a plan. And so if you realize that your supersized goal is stability, right? Financial stability, then okay, save $10,000 becomes one of the parallel plans. But then maybe you cut your spending, get a better idea of where your money's actually going. Maybe you hire a financial planner. Maybe you invest. Maybe you start a side hustle to contribute extra income. And so now all of a sudden, you see how many pillars we have supporting our actual endeavor. So then what happens if you only save $9,500? In scenario 1, if that was it, that was just the plan, you failed. You didn't actually reach your goal. But in my version, yeah, you only saved $9,500, but let's be honest, you saved more than $500 because you really took a look at your budget and you cut your spending. And then your financial advisor had you do some investing. Maybe you made some money from your side hustle. And all of a sudden, you are up way more than that $10,000 you would have been up in your original strategy. So it gets you there. It gets you there faster. And it is a more secure and stable path because the more roads to your destination, the more certain your arrival. Doesn't matter if there's an obstacle in one of the paths because you've got more paths.
I love it. And you're actually making me feel better about my word choice of the year. Every year I pick a word, but this year I was struggling with like, what was the word? And, I usually have that word by January 1st. There's some blog post or email going out on January 1st. This year, I did not have it. Nothing right. And so it finally came week 3, and I thought my word was going to be integrity, like being in integrity with everything, with myself, my finances, my health, my workout plan, like all the things, right? But it still didn't feel true. So I started looking at definitions and doing more research on the word. And what I learned is that really is an external force of how you measure yourself. Integrity is an outside system that usually someone else has set up, and then you align yourself to that. But I wanted to do more work like inside, like within me. So I discovered fidelity in looking at synonyms. But then what really came to me was self-fidelity, was putting the self in front of that. And that is an internal system. And that's more tied to like your moral compass, your values. So for me, this year, I've been saying whatever decision I make is in alignment with me having self-fidelity.
Alignment was the word that came up for me too. That's like, are you doing the things that you said you were going to do? That's what you meant by integrity.
Yeah. And so I didn't realize it, but it was like a pilot version of what you just taught me.
Yeah.
And I've been struggling with how do I, manage and juggle all of these competing priorities because they are sort of true for me to hit that, original goal. And so now I actually have the science and I understand it. But so I might even shift it a little more to make it even a little bit bigger because maybe self fidelity was the warm up. So thank you.
You're so welcome. What is so magical about these supersized goals is that they existed. Like I just put a language on it for you right now, right? If you're listening, like you have a supersized goal. You just haven't said the word. And when you find the words, you're going to be like, yes, this is the thread that's been going, you'll often find it like in your professional life, but also your personal life. It's a thing that you care about. And, for some people, it's like creativity or freedom. And you realize like, oh, everything that I'm doing in my work is all in service of freedom. Your volunteer work may be about freedom for other people. And you go, oh my gosh, now I see the through line. And now you can make decisions about what actually are your goals and your plans based on knowing what that supersized goal is.
Yeah, I love it. So now that people understand that, I know they're going to want more from you. You already mentioned some of the tools that you have, but can you tell people how do they find you? What's your website? Are you on Instagram? How can they get more of you?
Sure. I am terrible on social media, but you can find me there. Most importantly, if you think that if you're like, oh my gosh, I've been kind of feeling that itch that like, grit, it's not that great. People can download a free chapter of the shortcut online. So just go to shortcutbook.com, and I will send you you'll be able to get a PDF of a free chapter of the shortcut and see if this aligns with how you've been feeling like, oh yeah, I've been just beating my fists against a brick wall and I'm sick of it. But you can find me at CourtneyClark.com. My Instagram is Courtney_L_Clark. I'm trying to be better.
Oh, I don't know.
That's one of my parallel plans.
Yes,
we'll get better at social.
It's a competing priority. And
yes,
born in the 70s. How do you edit an Instagram reel? So one day
we all only have so many resources.
You're right.
And we have to make sure that we are using our resources towards the right goals.
Oh my gosh. Well, one final question before we wrap. I want to know, what does living fully mean to you?
I think living fully for me means really committing myself to all of the things that matter. Like I have had to, if I say that something is a value in my life, I'm not just going to pay it lip service. I'm going to do it wholeheartedly. So like one of the legacy things that I'm doing, because I'm never going to have a baby, is I am mentoring a 12-year-old girl right now in CPS care. And I don't really have the time. I'm not managing my own resources great. But I said that this is a value of mine and the opportunity presented itself. And so I have to take an opportunity to live out my values. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, you've given us like permission to do so many things and you've taught us so much. Like we now have permission to dream bigger and to really say that big, crazy, audacious dream out loud.
Yes. This is not about like only dream about things that are super realistic and achievable. It's like, no, save the resources for your big goals.
Yeah. Well, and you've also given us permission not to tread water when we don't have to. We do not have to have a gritty day every day. Change does not have to be hard all the time. Yep. And you've given us tools to use to really understand how to move the needle on what matters most in our lives, so that we can live joyfully and focus on that legacy that we want to leave behind. Like, oh my gosh, how do we thank you?
This is thanks. I'm so excited. I love sharing this with people because I think deep down, most people get it.
Yeah. I love that.
I think most people get it. So now we can talk about it.
So I love that we can tell the audience, we've actually figured out that we can release this podcast on the actual day that the shortcut comes out, which is April 7th. And they can get the shortcut on Amazon and
Yeah, we're going to do a special deal at Amazon on the 7th. So if you're listening on the 7th or the 8th, you can grab it too. But you can get your free chapter at shortcutbook.com first.
Yes. And I do want to encourage people to go to shortcutbook.com and sign up because I know you send goodies and emails and you just love sharing the research and the lessons that you learn. So I know people will keep in touch.
Yes, I love it. All right, quitters do win. Let's go out and tell the world.
Let me quit some of those tasks on my to-do list today.
I think you can. We can just be more efficient, but still very successful.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Courtney, for just sharing a little bit about your background and how, you learn that trauma can be overcome by using some simple tools that will allow people to truly live the life that they want to lead. But I think what matters most, what will be my biggest takeaway today, is we have access to tools so that life doesn't have to be hard. We just have to take the other path and stick with it, not in a gritty way, but just know that if we keep working on those parallel tracks, that
you can stick with the big vision and just move to a different path.
Thank you so much. I know that people love chatting with you today.
Talk to you soon.
Hey, y'all. Hey, before I go, a reminder that this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not professional advice. If you need medical, legal, or mental health support, please consult a qualified professional. Be sure to subscribe and follow Roots+Rebirth podcast. You can find me at Terri R. Broussard and movementmakercollective.com. Until next time, it's Terri R. Broussard. I'm cheering you on.